technology is amoral or has no morality, and it's the human who brings the morality or the non-morality to it. And that's not true. That's a fallacy. And the person who does the best job explaining that is Daniel Schmachtenberger. So I would definitely suggest people, if you want to get into much more detail about that, he starts out from how the plow actually made it so that we had to change the way we thought about animals in order to be able to have the animals, to be willing to whip animals and have them pull something behind us. So it's not that technology has no morality, it's that technology affects our morality in very powerful and meaningful ways that we don't even know until we're too far down the line. And that all being said, I'm not sure that there was any real pro-social idea behind any of the social media, which I call anti-social media, because it's, if I were trying to create a tool that were going to rip apart the social cohesion in our society, I don't think I could do a better job than exactly what we have today. And the thing that's been so exciting about Totem is that Bo is teaching me from a technical perspective, from the bones up, from the ground up, how we can make design decisions that are actually moral decisions, or that actually will enhance the moral possibility of the technology we're building.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho. This is the special Thanksgiving edition of Far Out with Faust, and I am excited and delighted to be joined by my returning champion guests, one Ted Wallach, who you've heard several times, and Bo Lopker, who you've also seen on the podcast. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them to give a brief intro, but many of you listeners will already have heard all about these guys. So go ahead, guys.
Thank you so much, Faust. It's wonderful to be back. Bo, do you want to go first or shall I?
Take it away, man.
Okay. When you say brief intro, do I start back in New York City when I was born, or where do we go from?
I don't think you have to go that far back.
What's your birthday, your social security?
Let's start with double digits.
Okay. Are we talking WeWork or we're past WeWork?
Yeah, like that, like a mini bio, a brief bio, kind of like
okay.
Yeah.
I made movies for a while. Then I found myself in advertising by accident. Then I ran a tech company, and finally figured out that what I was supposed to be doing was coaching. That's what I've been doing, and I really enjoy that. That's the place that I work out the best. And then I came to the realization that coaching and trying to support people to do wonderful things in the world is great. And there's one other thing that has to be done, which is we need an antidote to social media, because social media is literally killing children. And I have kids and I need to protect them. And it was fun to continue to talk about how much Zuckerberg has destroyed everything. But, that's just an ego trip. And at the end of the day, what really matters is, what are you going to do about it? And as Buckminster Fuller told us, build a new reality that makes the old reality obsolete. So Bo and I teamed up to create Totem, and Totem is the antidote to social media.
Bo, go ahead. Tell them a little bit about yourself, where, your background, and then get into tell them about Totem, because I'm so excited for you guys to hear about this.
I mean, that was amazing. I don't know if I could do better than that, but I'm on the technical side of things. I'm an engineer by trade. I spent 7 years at 23andMe, kind of turning science that they were making into products that people could actually use. And that's incredibly fulfilling. But the biology side of things, I feel like they're making really good progress, and I feel like there's a lot of really cool stuff happening there. But after my father died, I really got into the mental health and wellness space. And having been a pretty vocal detractor, I guess I'd say, from Facebook for, gosh, since it came out. I've never actually had a Facebook account. Kind of putting my stick in the ground there. I really, really wanted to figure out a way to make something that's like a healthy alternative to social media, that people could really, really bond over, instead of, just having thousands of fake friends online. So yeah, I think after 23andMe, I went on that kind of spiritual journey, and I found Ted, and he was doing this wonderful practice called Circle. And, we both kind of came together and was like, with our core skills combined, we make Captain Planet. No, we make,
Yes,
we can make something really cool here. And we started, and we're doing it. So yeah, that's what we want to talk about today.
this is so exciting, guys. I am personally participating in and learning from Ted, who many of you, who are loyal listeners, have heard how eloquent he speaks, and his uncanny ability to listen is I think part and parcel with what makes him such a phenomenal speaker, because you really can gather wisdom in the art of listening, and it's been lost in this instant gratification social media world society that we're all living in right now. But I always say, technology like social media can be used individually, and just like people who are going out and maybe what they're doing is not positive or helping people, but at the same time there are people who are using aspects of social media and different programs to help people. And the more we can get people on board with that, obviously we're going to see a shift in society and values. I mean, you see how easily society shifts with the trends and with what catches on. That's very obvious and apparent. So this is super exciting, because I'm going to begin personal certification with Totem, with Ted, and listening, to be able to participate this and become a better listener and help people. So I'm super excited. These two guys, one of the most credible people I know, but both these guys and what they've done already in their young lives and continuing to put out this positive force. So I talked a little bit about Totem in a previous podcast, but a lot has happened since then. And these guys are really on the verge of launching. And so who wants to tell them about Totem and its core and its essence and what it's going to be able to do?
I could jump in there. I think you touched on like a lot of really good topics there. Yeah, it's awesome how knowledgeable you are in the space already. I feel like I have nothing to teach you. But you did mention like a little bit about how social media and the people on it are separate, and there are good things that happen on social media, and I fully believe that. I think there's amazing people on social media. They're like incredible creators. There's incredible like interactions that happen on it. My main concern is that I don't think those platforms were built for those things. That they're advertisement machines. They're built to create engagement and do other. People have created really strong connections on these platforms, kind of despite what they were designed for, which was only like a testament to the human tenacity and how great these people are. And so like, yeah, I guess could we make a platform that actually is designed for those things? That's kind of like the exploration we're doing. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'll just add to that. I think a conversation that is had often is technology is amoral or has no morality, and it's the human who brings the morality or the non-morality to it. And that's not true. That's a fallacy. And the person who does the best job explaining that is Daniel Schmachtenberger. So I would definitely suggest people, if you want to get into much more detail about that, he starts out from how the plow actually made it so that we had to change the way we thought about animals in order to be able to have the animals to be willing to whip animals and have them pull something behind us. So it's not that technology has no morality. It's that technology affects our morality in very powerful and meaningful ways that we don't even know until we're too far down the line. And so you have to be extremely careful when you create technology, because any technology can go in lots of different directions that you might not have thought of ahead of time. And that all being said, I'm not sure that there was any real pro-social idea behind any of the social media, which I call anti-social media, because if I were trying to create a tool that we're going to rip apart the social cohesion in our society, I don't think I could do a better job than exactly what we have today. We have the perfect tool. And sometimes when you see someone create a tool that is extremely well fit for what it's doing, you might imagine that it was designed that way. And the thing that's been so exciting about Totem is that Bo is teaching me from a technical perspective, from the bones up, from the ground up, how we can make design decisions that are actually moral decisions, or that actually will enhance the moral possibility of the technology we're building, which is so exciting. And at the same time, I want to say, I am a flawed human. And I try to remember that at all times, especially when we're making those decisions. And I try to think to myself, how is my ego showing up to try to make this thing happen in this particular way? And what would it look like if I were to protect myself and everyone else against the worst of me and the worst of everyone else? And it reminds me of what Solzhenitsyn said. I haven't read the Gulag Archipelagos yet. I don't know that I'm old enough to handle the level of intensity that I think I will one day, but it's a little like reading, some of the spiritual Judaism stuff. You're not allowed to read it till you're 45. I'm 43, so I don't know. But anyway, one of the things he said is that the line between good and bad, or heaven and hell, cuts through the heart of all humans, meaning that the shadow and the light is in all of us. And so as we're trying to create this technology, we're trying to think about, well, how do we make it something that really supports people to bring out the best in each other? Because what social media does, or what I'm going to call anti-social media, it brings out the worst in you as effectively as possible at an exponential rate throughout the entire day. And it's constantly optimizing to try to find ways to make you act worse.
The other side of that coin, the dark side of the moon of this equation that you're talking about, is not only are the algorithms, designed to continue to polarize and sensationalize the most extreme opinions, because they are, but what they also do when they're not doing that is they divert people to exactly what they already want to hear and want to learn. So there is no exposure that meets anywhere in the middle. Everything is either an echo chamber or a clash of cymbals. You know what I'm saying? There is no middle ground. You know what I'm saying? And that's why the polarization of this country and it's, America still kind of has this effect on the world. What's going on here tends to start to go around everywhere. I'm sure it wasn't always like that, and it won't always be like that. But as of right now, the way I see it, that's kind of, you see the polarization happening, getting worse throughout the world. And so that's the other thing that's dangerous about social media, is you are not exposed to anyone that has anything but what you've already shown and taught the algorithms is your specific point of view. So we have no nuance. And you see, nuance is going extinct faster than most of the species on this planet right now. And it's a big problem. Everything is black and white. Everything is black or white. And that is it's a catastrophe waiting to happen. And it's coming out in so many forms, and I think that this is the answer. Communication is always the answer. And this app is going to give people an opportunity to truly communicate and with people who maybe they would never have realized they had so much in common for us. So that's why I'm so excited about it. But I just wanted to add that to what you were saying, Ted.
Yeah, and what I'd like to add to what, oh, go ahead, Bo.
Yeah, so I heard the notion of like polarization and separation. I think that's true to an extent on the social media platforms, but I think, speaking of nuance, there's a book called Breaking the Social Media Prism by Chris Bale, and he runs like a social media lab at Duke. And in that book, I'm going to paraphrase, probably butcher it, but in that book, he describes this prism instead of a polarization where both sides are actually seeing the same content, just editorialized very differently. And so they'll see the same event, and then this man in the middle, or men in the middle, or whatever, will take the same view, break it into its constituent parts and feed it to people in the way that they think that they want to be fed. So it's less of like two separate groups forming on social media as opposed to this like gradient that happens anytime an event happens and splits it. And then, towards the further and further ends, it gets even more heavily editorialized. And so everyone thinks the other side is doing something stupid or crazy, even though they're both looking at the same event. And so what we're doing on Totem is getting those people into the same room together, removing that middleman and having them speak honestly from their experiences instead of through this lens that other people want them to see through.
What we need, we are in desperate measures. We need this now more than ever. I mean, it's just, I always have believed, and I know this to be true on some level, because I'm close with many people who are even right now, about as far away from me, quote, politically as could be. But that's because there are basic tenets that we agree on, and I love them. I love them. Regardless of whatever they're they're politically espousing today. I know that has changed, and that many people are they feel a lot of loyalty to a party, which, I won't get into. I don't understand the loyalty to a party that is, basically, up for sale. I don't know, how can you keep that going? But communication, I think, is the key. John Kennedy knew that. He spoke about how if we don't have this, if we don't have transparency, we're lost, and communication is the key to that. So, yeah.
And I'll take that to another level, because I've thought a lot about communication. And when we talk about communication, we're usually talking about a conversation. And generally speaking, when we're talking about a conversation, we're talking about sharing to understand and listening to agree or disagree. So often what happens is one person will say something that they know or have seen or what have you, and then the other person will get that piece of what they've said and then decide whether they agree with that or not agree with that, and then ask for the next piece, and we sort of lob pieces over. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that as long as you're trying to create something together, like build a building. If I say 6 inches and you get it and you don't know what 6 inches is, we've got a problem. So we have to have communication. But what we really need is dialogos, dialogue. It's when the two logoses, the two understandings of the world come together. And that is an entirely different thing, which has nothing to do with my opinion and your opinion and your, are you left or right or any of that stuff. It's about me sharing my human experience, you hearing it, and then sharing your human experience, and not necessarily even responding to anything that I said. In a conversation, people always say, well, nobody listens in a conversation because you're always just waiting to speak. And people think that demonstrates an antisocial aspect of humanity. And I would say, no. That's a very pro-social aspect of a bad game. And here's why. The game says, if I stop speaking and you don't start speaking, it's awkward. And so it is your job to make sure you're ready to speak the moment I stop speaking. Well, if you need to speak the moment I stop speaking, then when do you get a chance to think about what you're going to say? It has to be while I'm speaking. And so if we want to have an opportunity, so it's very pro-social actually that people think about what they're going to say, because they're trying to keep the communication going. But if we're talking about dialogos, I need to share the logos. I need to share my understanding or share to be known, and even say things that I don't even know I'm going to say ahead of time. That's the most exciting moments in Circle, is when you share and you don't even know that you knew this. Like, you're saying something for the first time, you're hearing it for the first time, and everyone else in the circle is hearing it for the first time. That's an amazing experience where we really connect to humanity. That's really like seeing the self-reflective universe. It's an amazing moment. And it can only happen if everyone else feels that they don't have to do the job of thinking about what they're going to say. They're not there to do that. They're there to hold what's being said, and not to agree or disagree with it, but instead to simply hold it. And if you look at social media, it starts with this: up or down, thumbs up, thumbs down. And that comes directly from living or dying in a coliseum. And now it's literally talking about living or dying for our children.
So I feel like we've covered the problem. I don't know, Ted, do you want to go more into like the solution we've come up with or that we're using for the platform?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Circle already. What is that?
Certainly. I think that the best way to speak about Circle is, Bo, if you say what Totem does, because otherwise, I'll go off into this like highfalutin way of like why it matters to me, but
It's always highfalutin.
What actually happens, right? So I think if Bo, if you actually share like what the hell is this thing and why do we care, then I can fill in afterward. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of the history too. So Circle is this kind of way to communicate with a group of people, and it's something that the indigenous people of North America have like been doing for a very long time, and there's been thriving communities of people doing this in person since then. It's a way for a group of people to kind of settle their differences, or at least connect with each other and understand each other in a more deeper way, because when you're in the forest with a tribe, losing one person can be very devastating. And so being able to settle differences and not throw people in jail and things like that becomes very important for the community. These days, we tend to stock our prisons with people we don't like, and it's kind of devastating to a lot of communities, and it's what we've come up with for better or for worse. But they didn't have that luxury back then. And so we've taken this ceremony, and the community in general has taken the ceremony, and because of the pandemic, has brought it online. And so thousands of people have now started doing this online, where a lot of people thought it wouldn't work online. But what they discovered is it works just fine. I think there's aspects of the ceremony that work better offline, and there can be different ways to use it that work better offline. But for a lot of the core uses of it, it works fine online. And so that's where I met Ted, is through Zoom. It's funny we're doing this on Zoom right now, but we were having a lot of troubles doing the thing on Zoom, because Zoom is like this general purpose thing that's trying to be okay for everybody. But there are aspects of the ceremony that we needed more from our software. And so what Totem is this kind of next generation adaptation of this video conferencing technology, specifically tailored to that experience, to make that experience as best as possible. And the way it works is Totem will gather a group of individuals. They don't even have to be like-minded. They just have to be open to the process. And it allows people to speak without being interrupted. And I don't know of another time in my life where that is guaranteed. Sometimes people say, okay, I'm gonna let you speak, but let me speak. Doesn't sound genuine to me, and I don't trust it. But the software really guides people. It doesn't ever force you, but it really guides people into listening to each other and letting people have the full breadth of time that they need to feel like they're being understood. And oftentimes they are. And it's such a powerful thing. And so what the software does is it simulates the idea of having a talking piece, having a totem that you hand around in a circle to a group of people. And the rules are simple. If you have the totem, you can talk. If you don't have the totem, listen. There's an invitation to listen. And there's other things like the totem will go in one direction. There's a talking order and things like that. But the software really takes care of that for you. And so just these if we can all agree on these simple rules, like this communication I would say magic happens just kind of naturally by the way that we want to communicate and the way that we feel heard. So that's what the software does. But Ted knows a lot more about the practice and how to apply it in a healthy way, and a lot of the I guess lore behind it, if lack of a better word. But I don't know, Ted, does that cover what you wanted to cover?
Beautiful. Yeah. I could talk a little bit about some of the other use cases.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Because in addition to improving the I wouldn't even call it improving, completely revamping the online video player to be a ritualistic space that actually can handle what we're trying to do. Not that Zoom can't, it can, but man, it's so much better when you have a tool that's optimized toward exactly what you're trying to do with it. In addition to that, we're also creating a game so that people can actually play the game of Circle without having an official Circle keeper, so that they can do it with their family. So for example, in the morning, as much as I can, I sit with my 2 boys and my wife, and we pass a talking piece and we simply say, what are 3 things you're grateful for? That in and of itself is a very powerful thing. And maybe we would want to, as the boys get older, I'll ask more difficult questions. And we're adding some of those questions into the game so that people can use those questions. Then we'll also add things like an opening, because often when you start a circle, you do an opening, and an opening is a way for everyone to land together. That could be a meditation, that could be a quotation, that could be a song, that could be a drawing, it could be anything, but it's something that is created beforehand, shared, and everyone gets to drop in together. It could be a breath exercise. And we want to give people breath exercises. So I have a friend, for example, here in Stockholm who is creating Spotify for breath exercises. We're going to point toward him and say, grab a breath exercise, use that as your opening, and then go into Circle. That's one option. Another possibility is that, my wife and I sit in Circle every day for 20 minutes in order to keep a certain level of safety and connection and what have you. In addition to that, when we fight, we quickly grab a talking piece and use that, so we're not interrupting each other in the middle of a fight, because interrupting in the middle of a fight is a really effective way to make sure nobody hears anybody, and therefore you continue to feel unheard and unseen, which is what you're fighting about in the first place. It's almost always the case that it's not about the dishes, it's not about whatever the hell you think it's about. It's actually somebody feels unheard, unseen, unwitnessed, unappreciated. And once they feel heard, seen, appreciated, or witnessed, which Circle basically guarantees, doesn't guarantee, but it opens the possibility for it, things change rapidly. So that's a really powerful tool. The other thing I wanted to say is, while Bo was talking, it reminded me of something I hadn't thought of in a long time. I was coaching a client, and it became clear to me that the client really needed an opportunity to deeply cry. And for men, he was a man. This isn't always the case. This could be men, women, but in general, in the Western world, a lot of men have a difficult time crying because we've been told not to. And you're told not to enough, you're not going to. So you need permission. And Circle has a very powerful way of giving you permission to take space and do whatever you want with that space, and know that you're not going to be interrupted, which is a really powerful thing. And if you think about it, as Bo was saying, I can't think of any other situation in my life or even in the world where people have an opportunity to speak without being interrupted. And then I thought, oh, no, there is one. Stand-up comedians. And then I said, okay, so here it is, an opportunity to speak without being interrupted, in which your speech does not have to be a performance, nor does it have to entertain anybody. There are no expectations on your speech other than that what you share is coming from your truth. You're speaking your truth. Okay. So going back to the client, I knew that the client needed to cry, or I thought that that was what was needed. So I decided to go in the other room and find a big crystal. There just happened to be a crystal there, and it looked serious. It looked something that, you know, that had meaning. And I brought it in and I said, listen, I'm going to hand you this crystal. And once I hand you this crystal, I am not going to interrupt or say anything until you hand it back to me. So I'm going to hand this to you. That became the talking piece. I'm not going to interrupt you. When you're done, you're welcome to hand it back to me. And you don't have to say or do anything, you do as you please. And then I handed him the crystal, and it was like 1, 2, bawling, tears just falling down his face. And what I saw at that moment was, if you open up a container, a portal, a space with permission, and give the safety that you're not going to interrupt, and you are going to watch somebody, you are going to witness somebody, then they can go into their deepest places. And one of the deepest places is crying. And I thought about this, and actually it was a coach I was working with who said this to me, and I thought, this is brilliant. She said, crying must be such an important thing for a tribe, because it literally gets in the way of you seeing, which is highly dangerous for a mammal out on the plains. It gets in the way of you seeing and stops you from moving forward, or stops you from being able to interact. And so it must be so important, because it's loud and noisy, and other people around you hear it. So it must be so important that it stayed in evolutionarily as something that we do and interact with the other people around us, and that the other people hear us crying, and that that's a meaningful thing. And so it's not always that people cry in circle, because that's not always the case, although it's the case a lot more than I would think. But it is the case that people reach into a place in them where they speak things that they might not say otherwise. And by saying those things, they are literally taking toxins out of their body, out of their muscle tissue. What's his name? Vender. I can't remember the Dutch. He wrote The Body Keeps the Score. He talks about this, how if you speak some of your truth out loud, you actually take the toxins out of the muscle tissue. And if you take the tears and you test them, you will find toxins in them. But if you take the tears when you're crying from onions, you will not find those toxins. So clearly we need to push this stuff out of us in some way. And it comes through tears, and it comes through speech, and it comes through all of these things that happen when we're given permission and space and an opportunity to not be interrupted.
I'm hearing all this, and you know, I'm a big believer in, and I know that for some people who are more on the materialist side of things, this may sound woo-woo, but you know, you are going to be continuing to scramble to catch up as science does with what some of us understand goes hand in hand with these things. You know, as above, so below. If you speak your truth, not only will it detoxify your body, but it will detoxify your life. If you continue to be honest with yourself, with your loved ones, you will align with what your heart is after. And I'm telling you, the universe will realign itself to you accordingly. But so many people bite their tongue because they habitually imagine that by suffering themselves and keeping someone else from the uncomfortable moment when they have to deal with what is actually happening in a relationship, that somehow they're sparing that person or the children or whatever. But the only thing that they're doing is creating a big old vacancy sign in the middle of their heart. And that's not going to go away. And it will lead to physical sickness. I promise you. These two things are inseparable. And so what I'm saying is, not only will your health begin to reflect your ability to be honest in the moment with yourself, with your loved ones, but your life will begin. I'm telling you, the moment you tell your truth, I've experienced this to such a profound degree. The moment you man up, it's a terrible word to use, woman up, and
Human up.
you know what I'm saying? And
let
just
go. Let go is, I think, a
let
better
go
phrase.
and just be okay with the fact that maybe your truth is going to make someone uncomfortable, but but what's at stake is your happiness and your life, and your physical health. So I just want to piggyback on what Ted's saying, because I've experienced this to such a profound degree in my life that, I will never go back to biting my tongue again when it comes to, what I know is true in my heart. And just encouraging everyone who's listening, because I know so many people who do this, people who I love. And you just never know when you're going to hear something for like the 101st time, and you're just going to decide to actually hear it, instead of just listening to it.
Wait, I got a better. I'm
Go
totally
ahead.
with you. I agree with everything you said. So yes, and if you give people a space that is safe, in which you won't be interrupted, and you are open to the idea that difficult things will be said in this space, it's a lot easier for people to speak their truth. So I completely agree with you that it's important to speak your truth. And it's nice when you can speak your truth without even needing to build a container or have a ritual. However, it's not easy. The same reason that when you can take hallucinogens at any given time, and you might have what we call a bad trip. And then people say there are no bad trips because you learned something from it. Yes, and if you had a safe container where somebody was really watching over you, you had the right intention, and you had the permission to do what you needed to do, you'd get a lot more out of that experience. So I'm totally with you that you have to speak your truth.
Yeah.
And what Bo and I are really trying to do is build a tool that gives everyone an opportunity, the permission to speak their truth regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, like I used to often like not say things because I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a little bit of a slower speaker than Ted. And so sometimes people take my pauses as I'm done speaking and decide that they want to speak. And what that does for me is it kind of makes me not want to say things that might be like high impact or high authenticity, specifically because it might, like the way I speak might give someone the opportunity to jump in and not hear me out fully. And so, with my partner, we circle with each other, and it's given me, that platform to be a little more confident about saying things, because I know she's not going to make a rash judgment after every word that I say and try and interpret without all the information. And so instead she knows, like, I'll tell her when I'm done and I feel like I've been heard, which is really powerful. That being said, like, we've gotten into some of the use cases around Circle being great for relationship building and like more on the mental health side, but more recently I've been using this tool with a group of people that like we just become friends, and I find it's like such a more efficient way to reconnect with people that you want to reconnect with, not even just because something might be wrong or I need to get something off my chest. Like there's this one woman, Kat Ray, who is a keeper, and she hosts a bi-weekly circle called Cat Circle. And her family shows up, my friends and my family show up. It's kind of very fluid. It's very like kind of lightweight compared to what we've been talking about. And it's just like an amazing way to connect people that I would never talk to in my normal day and life. And I get such emotional sustenance from it by like reliving this experience of finding the shared human connection between a group of people who, without this would just assume there's no way we could understand each other at all. And like just that is like if we can even enable just that, I think it would have an outside effect on like how grateful we are to be in this human experience together versus trying to find the flaws and differences in each other constantly. So yeah, that's the thing that I've actually more recently been really interested in with the platform and how to use Circle. I don't know if that resonates with you, Ted.
That resonates with me a lot. I love the idea that sometimes we use it for conflict. Sometimes we use it for going into extreme depth. And sometimes we simply use it to create relationship. And it doesn't have to be so heavy. And when I moved to Sweden, my two best friends who live in New York, I want to stay in contact with them. And so what I did was I said to them, every week, let's pick a time that we're going to get on the phone no matter what. And every week we'd get on the phone, or every week I'd see on my calendar, oh, I got to talk to Jason. I don't really have anything to say to Jason. Maybe I should, I'm kind of busy. Maybe I should push it, he'll understand and that sort of thing. And sometimes we would get on the phone. And what would we talk about on the phone? We'd catch up, because what do you do when you haven't talked to someone in a while? You say, how have things been? Which in essence means let's leave the present moment in which we are actually present with each other, and let's recap the past in which it is over already, and we might create it in the future, but who cares? So in essence, you are leaving the generous present moment, as Dr. Joe would put it, and you are instead recapping a narrative of the past, which isn't terribly interesting in the first place. So what I've done now with both of my friends,
and likely not likely maybe half true,
I mean, yeah, because you're doing it
flawed
from
memories
right.
Can be exactly.
Yeah, you're doing it from memory, so it really has nothing to do with reality anyway. It just has to do with what you might create in the future, actually, right? But separate issue. So what I do now, and then I felt bad because I'd get on the phone. I'm like, this is my best friend. Why don't I have nothing to talk to him about? Like, I love this guy. Like, he's like family to me. I've known him since I was in second grade. Why can't I like I can't talk to him once a week? I can't find something to talk to him about. And the reason is because I'm trying to find something to talk to him about. I'm trying to be in really a Newtonian conversation, something that happened in this 3D space that I want to share with him and he shares with me, and we get into all the details. So instead, I said to them, we're just going to sit in a circle. And now we've been doing this for months and months and months. And in 20 minutes, we drop in real deep. We're in, we're out, and I feel like I am in his life. Because what's he talking about? He's not talking about what happened. He's talking about his experience of his life at the moment, in the present moment, in a quantum way. He is expressing all of the emotion, the feelings and thoughts that he has about his world. And the feelings and thoughts he has about his world are really all I care about. I don't care what's actually happening. I care about how he feels and thinks about what's happening. And now he gets to think and feel about what's happening, which he wasn't going to necessarily do himself. And so it's a really powerful opportunity to connect with people, both who you just met and people who you've known forever. And so to give an example, one of the men who's going to be in this training that you're joining us for, Faust, and we're thrilled to have you. This is a training basically. Although we want everyone to be able to simply have circles with their family and their friends, and maybe over Christmas or Hanukkah, or now I have to name any.
Yeah, don't even try.
Every possible of all religions under all circumstances in time. But the difficult ones where you have to be with your family, and as Ram Dass would say, if you think you're enlightened, spend a weekend with your family, right? So they're difficult, and so we're trying to create tools. We're trying to create a way to use Totem so you can do circle with your family and be somebody who isn't an official circle keeper. However, in addition to that, we also want to have some really great official circle keepers that have been fully trained. And that's what you're joining us for, that training, as we're learning to make that training great. One of the participants in that training, I was introduced to him by somebody else, and was told, you need to speak to each other. Why? Oh, you just have so much in common. You have to speak to each other. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. We have the same likes. I don't know. So we got on the phone, and in a few minutes, I thought, I don't want to rehash, what I've done in the world and what he's done in the world, and then try to, I was like, can we just jump on Totem and I'll show you something? And he was like, absolutely. So we sat in circle for 35 minutes. And after that, without any question in my mind, I knew that he'd be fantastic circle keeper, and I wanted him to be part of our thing. And I asked him, and he said, I'd be honored. And now he's part of our training. And so simply a brand new person that I'm meeting, jump right in with that. I also give it to my clients to use with their wives and husbands and significant others and what have you, in order to help with their fights. But also I give it to clients who are hiring new people into their company. I say, sit in circle with this person. Make sure you really hear each other first, because they're going to answer all the questions you want them to answer. You're going to answer all the questions they want you to. None of that's going to matter. What's really going to matter is, do you actually hear each other? And if you sit in circle, you'll find out.
And you'll give the person a chance to truly express what, I mean, in all likelihood, you would never have gotten to know that person. And I don't care if you're going to be working with someone, there's a level of trust involved in that relationship. Really, no matter how high or low you go on any kind of chain of employees, there's a level of trust there. So it's such a great opportunity. My God, I hope it's embraced by the corporate world, because obviously there are some serious problems with the corporate, what's the word, modus operandi, or how they tend to do things.
But Faust, let me interrupt you for 1 second. I want to add one thing as I'm realizing we're talking about this. Is I want to invite Bo and I to get vulnerable if he's open to it. The other thing that we've used Circle for, which is probably the most important thing, is that Bo and I are founding a company together, and he and I do not see the world the same way at all. I'm a creative and he's an engineer. And I thought creatives and producers were different. Creatives and engineers are we don't see the world, and part of the problem is sometimes we think we see the world the same way, and then we don't. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. The things that we have disagreed on and not realized. I mean, the problems that we've had and the difficulty that we've had really communicating. And at one point I was really sad about it. I was like, oh, maybe we can't make this work. And then I came to the realization that every one of those places where we have conflict is a gift, because it's testing out our tool. We use the tool, we sit in circle together, and then we know that if Totem can get us through our conflict, bring an engineer and a creative together, then it can bring anybody together. And that's part of, us eating our dog food, so to speak. And there are times where we don't want to sit in circle. And that's great too, because we're like, fuck, I don't want to sit in circle. And why don't I feel like sitting in circle? And this is going to come up for all of our users too. And how do we still get people to sit in circle, even when they don't feel like it, because they know they need to, or what have you? And I'd love to hear what Bo has to say about that.
Yeah, Bo, me too.
Yeah. The relationship, the co-founder relationship, look, I'm an engineer, so I'll say some statistics. The co-founder relationship is the number one reason, 90% of companies fail because of the co-founder relationship. It's the singly most, and by a large margin, the hardest part about creating an organization. It's just, it just is, so many values and so many world perspectives come colliding together between two people, even people that have been lifelong friends, all of a sudden discover they actually don't think the same way. And
it's like a fucking marriage. It's like a marriage almost,
It's worse.
The honeymoon phase is over when things get going. It's worse, is right.
Not that marriage is bad, but it's definitely harder in many aspects than a marriage. Because you also have your partner usually that you also have to maintain that relationship with. And so we've used Circle more to help understand each other and move this thing forward. And, and bring, the shared vision to light than anything else. We basically just run circles for every single one of our meetings. We don't have normal meetings in this organization. We do them on Totem. If we have to screen share, we kind of just share links with each other, but we do it on Totem, and we make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. And I've been an engineering manager, I guess, almost 8 years now. And engineers are introverts for the most part. I've met, they're all very different. I can't overgeneralize engineers, but for the most part, they'd rather code than speak. Code is their language, right? And I share that same attribute. Although Ted has helped me come out a little bit. And so when we bring engineers to meetings, they would often rather not contribute to the meeting, even though they have brilliant things to say. And so when I was 23andMe, I would often see who's the quietest and call them out to be like, hey, what do you think about this? And 90% of the time, they said the one thing in the meeting that needed to be said, which was so important. And so I wish I had Circle then, so I could run the meetings regularly like that and get everyone comfortable with contributing and speaking and listening, because I think that we wouldn't have spent so many useless meetings together for no reason. The other thing I realized in engineering is there's the thing called stand-up that most tech companies do. And it's this practice where in the morning, typically, or at least when all the engineers are there, so maybe afternoon, they get together in a circle and they go one by one and do these kind of status updates. And it was fun to see like remnants of Circle in that practice and to make that connection when we started doing it more often. So to your point about companies and organizations and using this practice, like they are already, they don't call it that. And it's not the ceremony that we want it to be. And it's not really speaking your truth, but it is, the format's there. People have naturally gravitated to the format because it's so human and so natural. And so I think setting the right context around it is really the hard and important part, and the thing that I think could bring a lot of value to those spaces. And I'm not sure I answered your question, Ted, but I feel like
Do you want to speak to times where you've been especially frustrated with me and we have used Circle and or Faust and we've used Circle and how it's your experience of how it's helped us and that sort of thing. If you think of things like that, I feel like anecdotes are always nice to share because people can really connect to the narrative.
Yeah, I can tell a story. The thing that pops in my head when you mentioned that, the thing that came up first, and I'm not sure this is exactly what you're looking for, but when I first did this with you, it was brand new to me. You were my first introduction to the practice. Since then, I've talked to many keepers and read many books and explored the space on my own, and it's been really, really gratifying. But while I was still learning what this thing was, we went to a festival together in Sweden in this beautiful kind of country farm area, and there were a bunch of people there, a bunch of amazing people there doing art and just getting into their spirituality and trying to understand the world in a different way. And you're like, what do I have to offer these people? And you stood up in the middle of the dining area, not much of a plan, and decided to tell everyone we're holding a circle, in the cabin over there. Whoever wants to come, let's get into it. And I was like, that. You didn't really tell anybody what this thing was, and no one's going to show up, but a ton of people showed up just because I think they loved your charisma and they loved loved your enthusiasm about it. In fact, way more people showed up than you thought would show up. And more people showed up than could really fit into one circle. And so, you're a keeper. You've been doing this for over a decade, by my count. You have considerable experience in the art. And I had been in potentially, let's say, 15 circles as a participant at that point. And you saw the room, you saw all the people, you saw me looking nervous, like, what are we going to do? There's too many people here. And you're like, okay, this half of the room, you're coming with me, you're in my circle. This half of the room, you're in Bo's circle. And I was like, what?
Oh, shit.
I'm like, God damn it, Ted. And then you're like, you got this, dude. And I was like, no, I don't.
No, I don't. Don't you fucking dare walk out that door. Son of a bitch.
I don't have anything.
Shit.
And so I didn't have any time to prepare. I was like, what do I say? And you threw a couple things at me. Threw a couple like openers and prompts and questions at me that I don't exactly remember what they were because I was in full panic mode. But once everyone sat down and I rehashed my learning a little bit about the practice, I realized that they weren't there to listen to me. They were there for me to make the space, to me to provide some solidarity between the people and to really create the context around what we're doing, which I knew well. And that's a lot of the battle. And I kind of just created a comfortable space for them, and everyone's willing to be there and eager. And I let the circle have a life of its own and tried not to control what was actually being said as much as just being a role model for how the practice is done. And to me, that's so powerful. That was such a powerful moment because I realized that there was a space that we were creating together. And what happened in the space is something we all made together. It wasn't something that I was really responsible for. And when I let go and just listened and moved the conversation along by interpreting what people are saying and mixing things together and finding themes in the conversation, there's an art there for sure, but people need this, people want this, and the amount of participation I saw, I just was unprecedented to me. The only real experience I had was leading meetings, and usually people are just checked out. People are just like, when is this over? Can I get this done? The amount of engagement that I saw in that space and the amount of proactive learning and listening and speaking, it was a very different modality from what I used to just hosting meetings. And so that was I was quite pissed at you for that solid 10 minutes. I was like, I hate you, Ted. I hate you, Ted. I think in my head, I was like,
I'm gonna kill you. That's hilarious.
And then once that calmed down, it was amazing.
What I love about this, and what I would love to frame this for people who are okay, this sounds cool, and I want to ask you guys in a moment to get into some of the specifics that a circle can take, so that people understand. Oh, okay, so if I, could I be someone who could host a circle or be a keeper, and what would that entail, and what would be the purpose so if I had a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting, would there be a theme, and I want to get into that, but what first I want to say is, and I believe this, when you and what I think part of what Bo experienced and realized, and that once he settled down and started to kind of just rehash what circle is being intended for and what it's being used for, is that you can't, it's easy not to be self-conscious if you imagine that you can't fuck this up. Excuse my French. That you can't, you really can't screw this up. You know what I mean? Like when you know what you have to do, and it's simplified to the point where you know that they're the only thing that could come of this is a beneficial aspect to people's lives. It's easy not to be self-conscious about, am I going to be a good circle keeper? Should I do this shit? People get, in their heads about a lot of things. And that can create a little bit of anxiety. So I'm just encouraging people to consider this, because you can't screw it up, and you really can't screw it up. Bo, I don't know, you tell me if I'm picking this up right, but that you realize that, maybe 10 minutes after the circle started and things started to flow.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. What I learned is not that necessarily everyone's a good keeper, because I think the practice has an incredible amount of depth. And I've talked to some of like the community leaders in this space, people have been keeping circles for 40, 60 years. And the depth that they provide to their spaces, like, it gives me kind of chills to think about. And so there's an art to it, and there's a mastery there. But that being said, even the worst circle keeper like myself, it provides a positive experience for people. So
right.
It's not like being a bad comedian where it's like people just are mad after if you tank. Being a bad circle keeper, unless you're like, violating some of the core concepts of what circle is, and
right.
and not setting a good example for how to share, like, which is so human. It's hard to mess up. It doesn't matter what your political views are, or what your thoughts are on subjects and whatnot. It doesn't matter. It's like, how do I be authentic in my speech? Like, it's natural. And so, yeah, if that's all you can think about, then like you'll create an experience that is positive for people, and they'll walk away thanking you for it specifically.
Right.
And just being more connected in general. So it's a very fulfilling practice to take on.
And practice is the key word. All I'm trying to encourage is that it's not something that I think that you should be self-conscious about. If you're called to this, and if you feel like this is something that I might want to do, it is a practice. And I have no doubt that, the more you do this, the more depth you can create, and the more you can become somebody who's really, really great at this. I have no doubt about that. That's why I'm so interested in getting better at it myself. But I'm just encouraging, people who might be interested but hesitant because of this, like, oh, well, I don't know, but I don't know if I could do that. Well, I think that if you feel like you might, you should investigate it. You should follow that thought, because this part of you is interested. And it's a practice, right? So everything we get better at, everything we practice, we will get better at. I've made my kids play ping pong with me every single night since we moved to our new place in Georgia, and I'm like, I want to show you that. And we play one game each. So like, even just, it's literally 15 minutes, 10 minutes of practice every night. It's been, let's see, it was July. It's November. And they're either beating me. Okay, one is 8, one is 9, one is 11. And they're either beating me now, or we're going into overtime, and I am sweating trying to beat them. I've been playing ping pong for years. Okay, it's been 5 months. The improvement just from practicing a little bit every day has been dramatic. Okay, I don't even want to tell you how close these games are.
Oh yeah, you don't want to teach kids things you don't want to be beat at. That's for sure.
I love the competition though. I've created competition. It's fantastic because it's fun for us now. And they give me a run for my money, man. But anyway, that's my spiel about practice.
One other thing to say about practice is I said to my kids the other day, practice makes perfect. And then as it came out of my mouth, I grabbed it and thought, oh, wait a minute. Practice makes perfect. That is a curse that has been taught to me and taught to a whole generation. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes you better. Perfect is not something we arrive at. Perfect is just anxiety.
Yeah, we often talk about truth, Ted, and truth and perfect, I think, occupy the same space in my mind, where like, is truth an absolute value, or is it something that we just try to get closer and closer to? And so, I don't know. I always ask Ted, if not that is this right or wrong? I was like, is this less wrong? Am I closer to being right here? And that helps me understand, especially like, because Ted and I think so differently, that I may never fully understand how he thinks or how he views the world, but I want to get as close as possible to it to understand that.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's not just that we are an engineer and a creative. We are an atheist and a person who, I definitely say I believe in God, whatever that means. But what I would really say is what the shamans say, which is the shamans from Lake Titicaca, which is God is too big to fit into any one religion. So I definitely feel that there is a intelligent force in the universe that is doing something, and Bo definitely sees it differently. And so, being a circle is helping us see each other's way of seeing the world and realize we don't need to see the world the same way. We simply need to hear the way the other one sees it.
Agreed. And it's I remember something that Ted said. I'm sorry, that Bo said in one of our podcasts, in our podcast together, the solo podcast we had, and I remember thinking, just how incredible and different an engineer's mind, and I was kind of getting his take on some of those more spiritual things I was saying, and it's always fascinating to me how much we can complement each other, even as you know, like, so I work with an incredible editor. He is my resident skeptic. Okay, we could not be two. I mean, we will literally create a video, and then we will debate about that video for an hour after it's done. He will create this beautiful video that I've worked over with him about the connection between DNA and emotion, and then afterwards he'll be like, "But it's all bullshit." And I'm like, "All right, that's it." And then we'll go at it. But we create together so well, and we do come together. And as hardcore of a skeptic as he is, and he's hardcore materialist skeptic, I just managed to wedge, this slight, minuscule, I get my toe just in the door to get him to consider things that maybe he wouldn't consider. And he does the same to me. I'm not going to lie. He has me thinking about things that I normally wouldn't, looking at it from different views. So we both learn together. And I just think that some of these relationships that happen because people find common ground and work together, even though they're so different, are the most beautiful relationships, because the most productive things can come out of them. So you guys, I take my hat off to the way that you have used your own product to, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand the situation, in all likelihood, Totem would have never reached where it is and beyond where it's going if you guys didn't actually use it to get over the differences that you had. Is that accurate for me to say?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's amazing.
I can say without any hesitation that Bo and I would not have survived as co-founders if we hadn't sat in circle together regularly. And I would say that from the companies that I've worked for, a lot of them, especially the bigger ones and the more dramatic ones, had the founders really sat in circle together and heard each other and held each other to their best and their worst. It would have been a fundamentally different experience.
So I could say so much about that statement, but we would need a whole nother podcast to do so. Because the implications about this world we're living in and where it's come to with some of the, things that are accepted as, kind of as belief systems that are, this natural selection and survival of the fittest. And sorry, I didn't mean to step on your face, but I'm just trying to get to where I'm going. It's okay. We understand. Go make that money, boss. I just feel like the world would be a different place, a gentler place. We wouldn't have the disparity and the polarization that we have, and the hatred that continues to be, stoked by these same people with these crazy ideas. So I love what you guys are doing. I'm excited for my guests, for my family, and for my life. So I'm so glad that this is a perfect Thanksgiving week podcast, because I'm grateful you guys were resilient and stuck it out. You used your product to do so. I'm grateful that I'm involved in it in the capacity that I am. And I'm excited to learn more about it and become a better.
For Thanksgiving, what we can invite people, if they want to use the tool and simply try it, if you're sitting at your Thanksgiving table, you're already in a circle. And if you take something from the table, there's always stuff on the table. Call it a talking piece. Doesn't matter. Don't use a knife. And
not a sharp one.
Or use a knife, use whatever you want. And if you simply say, if everyone can share a few things they're grateful for, I'm going to pass the talking piece in one direction, and everyone has an opportunity to share. And you also have an opportunity to share nothing if you choose, because there are 3 rules. You talk when you have the talking piece. The talking piece only goes in one direction, which means that every voice is essential and important, and we want to hear it and is welcome. And the 3rd rule is you're always allowed to pass, which means your silence is welcome here. If you bring that to your Thanksgiving table, I think you will open up a portal and a space and give permission to people in a way that maybe they haven't experienced before, which is quite powerful in my home.
You'll make it a Thanksgiving dinner to remember, I promise you, if you want to give this a try. It doesn't matter how big your family is. I'm sure everyone would like to say something without being interrupted. I mean, I think it could be a profound experience. I encourage anyone who's even the least bit excited by the idea to just give it a try. And if you're worried about how long it'll take, then give everyone 2 minutes, 1 minute.
We should also say that Totem is a nonprofit specifically because we wanted to protect ourselves from our worst from the worst we can be. And because we're a nonprofit, we are raising money, but not raising money in the old school way of VC and what have you, which I've done in the past, which is its own thing, but that doesn't fit for what we're trying to do. Instead, we're raising money by doing an Indiegogo campaign so everybody can be a part of supporting this. And we hope that you'll come to our totem.org, TOTEM.org, and check out the Indiegogo campaign and join us.
Absolutely. You can find all that in the video description as well. Go ahead, Bo.
Yeah, we're a nonprofit because Circle's about transparency and authenticity. So we wanted to be a nonprofit. All of our financials and stuff is going to be open to the public. We're also open source. All the code we write is on GitHub, if you know what that is. And so you can audit or contribute or just look at the code and see and learn from it if you want to. Yeah, and we really wanted to go the crowdfunding route because we really believe that this is a community thing. We don't want a few people controlling all of the financials of the company. And so by crowdsourcing, it really is like the ethos at the core of what we want to build here. I'm actually wearing the Totem swag right now. We have these sweaters on the crowdfunding page. We also have some cool sweatpants as well.
I love sweatpants.
And we have the physical board game.
Yeah, these are all custom, like hand dyed. So everyone is unique and everyone will get a slightly different variation, which I love.
I got to talk to you guys about your merch guy. Nice.
No.
This has been awesome, guys. I'm so glad we got the connection going and we made it happen, even though it's a holiday week, and we're on literally different. I think we've triangulated most of the world. I think because Bo's in Hawaii, Ted's in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm in Florida in the United States. So we got an awesome GPS triangulation going, I think.
Faust, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've got one more thing to say, which I think
Sure.
is necessary, kind of a bigger story. I've been watching a lot of Daniel Schmachtenberger, and he talks about the meta crisis. And so if you take any of the crises that we have, AI can go out of control. We have wars going on that could turn into nuclear wars. We have climate change. We have pollution. We have all these different existential crises. And the question is, if you go upstream from those existential crises, is there something that you can do that's going to solve all the crises together, or at least open up for the possibility of solving all the crises together? And what Daniel Schmachtenberger talks about is sense making, which is a powerful thing, and it's his thing, and I totally get it. What we're up to is dialogue, is getting people to hear each other so that they can agree about things, not so that they can have opinions, but so that they can agree and hear each other. Because if you can agree and hear each other, then anything is possible in terms of the solution space. And if you can't agree and hear each other, and you have a tool like social media, which is making it harder and harder every single day to hear each other, you will never be able to solve any of those tools on the bottom. The other thing to say in a positive light is sometimes I get very, dark and sad about social media and how the world is and Facebook didn't exist 15 years ago. What are we at? 15 years? Is it 15 years? Whatever it is.
Maybe,
okay?
yeah.
There was a time I remember quite recently where Facebook did not exist, okay? And there was no social media. And just as quickly as it came, it can go away. So the idea that it's here to stay and there's nothing we can do, that's not true. It is not something that has to be here by any means. And the same tools that exponentially made it powerful and made it, find its way throughout the whole world are the same tools. If you just run them backward, if you, instead of running them for gossip, you run them for intimacy, which is what we're trying to do with our platform, you go the opposite direction rapidly. And so we don't have to sit in the darkness. The darkness can be the thing that puts us right back into the light. We lost Faust.
I just like that he's smiling at us.
Ted,
Yes.
so sorry about that. I
No
don't know.
worries.
You were just finishing by saying the same
You
way
got it.
Facebook.
You have
has
it. You have it
come.
on there. I got to run, but you have it on there.
Yeah, we got it. Ted, listen, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
And you, brother.
Appreciate your time, brother.
Can't wait to sit in circle with you.
You too, brother. Take care.
Take care.
Oh, thank you for your time, man. Hey,
Yeah, it was good seeing you again, man.
You too, man. You too. You take care. I'm excited to continue on with you guys and enjoy Hawaii.
Actually, I'm back in San Francisco now, but
Oh, are you? Okay. Very cool.
as of a
Awesome.
day or two ago. But
Appreciate
yeah,
your
have a
time,
good rest of
brother.
your day, man.
You too, man. Thanks. Take care.